his Bel Air mansion at lunchtime today. Paramedics reportedly called to see him. He was unconscious apparently and had to be given CPR as he was taken to that hospital.
Music journalist Jacqueline Springer. Jacqueline, it was only a few months ago that you were here in this very studio talking about these dates that were being planned for London.
Yeah, at that time, again, it was all speculation. Is he really going to do it? And then we had no idea that it was going to stretch into this raft of proposed dates. But at the time, in here, there was, real concern with would he do it? Is he strong enough, at the age of 50? Because he looks frail, talk openly about his vegetarianism, he's had additional health problems that, impacted our family.
But it's been a very long time since he'd managed to complete a deal, hasn't it?
Yeah, there were, some haphazard elements. There's been a couple of award performances that had been very condensed. It was nothing like the Motown 25 anniversary where he gave you the moonwalk that he so famously seems to copyright and so on. And, again, because of all the problems concerning his court cases, all the litigation, he had moved from the stage into the courtroom, so people had forgotten the magnitude of his power.
Yes, and his private license to overtake all that talent that he had. It was so obvious in the 70s and 80s in particular, that these 50 dates sold out so fast. Fans from all over the world so keen to see him.
Many of them travelled here to camp out Wimbledon style outside the O2, to get physical copies of the actual tickets. And of course, at the end of last week, the promoters had actually held back a batch and released that final batch to build anticipation. But we also shouldn't forget that the dates were due to begin on the 8th of July. And they were delayed. It was pushed back into the 13th because, AEG said that Michael wanted to put on a bigger show. So presumably there were more auditions, more strict, just more robust, choreography rehearsals.
Yes, that's what we heard when his very spokesperson giving us the states, that he was determined to put on this amazing polished performance, and that they needed more time to build the sets.
Yes, and he's a perfectionist. You can see that from his body of work. He pioneered the tool that is the music video. Like David Philippo just said, the fact that he was there and harnessed so much promotion for black artists into the mainstream generation. He was cute.
I remember staying up very late to see those two videos of the video.
And I slept in my mother's bedroom because I was so frightened by what John Landis had actually produced. It's a classic music video.
Many people in shock all over the world. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, let's speak now to music journalist and broadcaster Paul Gambaccini, who knew Michael Jackson. What is your reaction this morning to the
Well, I am shocked that he has died. Of course, I'm not surprised that he would not be able to do 50 dates. That always seems to be a bit much on anybody's plate. But you didn't expect him to die, and you wonder if stress from preparing for this event contributed to this collapse. We will have a great deal to learn about the medical circumstances of his demise.
When did you last speak to him? I mean, did you manage to interview him when he came over for the launch of that O2 series?
No, although Dermot told me about doing it, because Dermot, of course, was the MC of that, and he said the thing that was so amazing was how tall he was, because he embraced Dermot, and he was taller than Dermot O'Leary, and people don't think of Michael Jackson as being tall. He was apparently over 6 foot, and in his personal life, he didn't speak in that high voice either. So to think that such a tall man has been felled like this is quite something.
And musically, where do you place someone like Michael Jackson?
He is definitely one of the greatest stars of recorded music. There is no doubt of that. He would be in the top 10 of all time, regardless of who the other 9 people were. But you also have to remember that he went through different stages and owed some of his popularity to collaborators who I'm with whom he did the great trilogy of albums, Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad. Thriller is still the all-time best-selling album in the world, and bearing in mind that record sales are in decline as people get their music from the internet, it's almost certainly going to be the all-time best-selling record album. And he had his historic string of hits at Motown with the Jackson 5. When they began, Berry Gordy demanded that his writers and producers come up with a string of number ones for them. He said, I want number ones of the first 3 singles, and he got number ones of the first 4 singles. I Want You Back being the first one, the still classic. And there's no doubt that the records will be listened to for decades to come.
When you compare someone like Michael Jackson with other stars of the last 50 or 100 years, the eccentric behaviour, the personal setbacks, the scandal that dogged his life in the last 20 years, does that all feed in to make the whole star, what he was as a star, even more compelling?
I will give you an analogy. When people who know Paul McCartney meet, they talk about Paul for about 20 seconds. But because Paul lives by rules which we understand as human beings, people change the subject. When people who meet Elton John meet, they talk about him for a long time because Elton has always been a different type of person living by different rules. And Michael Jackson is a similar story. And he's one person whom no one completely knows, because there are parts of him that were exhibited with different people under different circumstances. So the efforts that people around the world will now make to try to come up with a comprehensive biography will really be stymied, because they're going to have to interview scores of people and different kinds of people.
And you think back to the death of Elvis Presley, you look at the fans already gathering around the streets of Los Angeles now, and the fact that in the 21st century, Michael Jackson is known to so many people. I mean, what sort of impact do you think it's going to have on them? I mean, can you quantify the numbers of people who know and are fans of Michael Jackson?
In between the phone calls that I've been getting tonight from news organizations, I called a person who I knew had started his music career because he had been inspired by Michael Jackson, and he was in tears. He was sobbing. He was shaking. And although it will sound corny to people who don't share this affection, there will be probably at least hundreds of thousands and maybe millions of people in the world in the next 24 hours who will have extreme emotional reactions. This is world news story number 1 at this moment. I know it's number 1 in Japan, for example.
He was described as the Peter Pan of pop. I mean, as an individual, was he really like that? Was there a naivety about him? Or was that just for public consumption? Was there a much harder, steelier side to Michael Jackson in private?
The steelier side of Michael Jackson was in the performance, where he paid attention to every detail. I once had a conversation with the late John Peel, and we agreed that Michael Jackson was the greatest showman that either of us had ever seen, even though he was not Peel's musical cup of tea. But the show that he put on, the care that he put on, was spectacular. And even though if for soul or emotion you would prefer James Brown, or you prefer other artists for different reasons, just as somebody putting on a show, Michael Jackson was top. And that means he had a mind for detail. Now, in his personal life, he may have been unusual, but he was probably clever as a fox. I mean, he had his own preferences, but he knew how to handle people. I don't think for a minute he was dumb. I mean, I was at his house once 24 years ago. What was then his house. I met the llama, met the snake, and I have to say that he did live in a child's world. He had a false